Hi everyone, I hope you're doing well today. I've put together a collection of 4 of my favorite Valentine's projects for you, so sit back and enjoy. These are some pieces of wood that I bought for a banner. Bought this on Amazon. I will try and link something like it. When I went to go look for the same thing, they were out of stock or they weren't selling them anymore. But you could definitely even do this with cardboard or even thick cardstock if you wanted to. So I went over all of these with that same Highlander from Fusion and let it dry. And now what I'm doing is I'm mixing some milk paint. And milk paint is a powdered paint that you put 50 percent your milk paint, 50% water. You mix it up, and I actually added a little bit too much water to this, but you let it sit out for about 10 minutes, and then you go over it. And I am going over each one of these, going over the ones that I painted with the Fusion, and I'm going over it with the milk paint. And you can see milk paint is kind of watery, and it goes on kind of watery. It takes a couple coats, but it does. The second coat, you'd be surprised. I actually ended up doing like 5 of these because originally I was going to do something different, but I only used 3. But anyway, I go over all of these with the milk paint, and the milk paint I'm using is Creamy, and it is by Sweet Pickins. And whenever I use my milk paint, I always pretty much use my heat gun to dry it because that causes additional cracking. And part of the reason I use milk paint, and I think a lot of people use milk paint, is to get that wonderful crackling. It's a very natural looking aging effect. Yeah, you can use crackle paint, but it's not quite as natural as this and organic. And so anyway, I always go over it with my heat gun, and you'll get all these cracks, and I'm rubbing off the little extra. Now, one thing to note, if you use milk paint on raw wood, it doesn't tend to crack very much because a lot of the paint absorbs into the wood. So the reason this is cracking is because I painted the with Paint Couture, Fusion paint first, and it has a top coat on it and it's sealed, so it's not being absorbed into the wood. And the reason it's not turning pink is that I used Fusion paint and it has a sealer. I did 2 coats, and then I will go over it with my heat gun. I know a lot of times people think, well, the first coat, if it cracks, they're all excited. They don't want to do the second coat because they're afraid they're going to cover the cracks. Most of the time, it turns out even better. If you watch what I'm doing here, the second bunch of cracks are even better. So now what I'm doing after the milk paint's dry and I heated it all up, I'm going over this with my sanding block. And I'm basically just going over all the edges so that the red shows through. And again, it didn't turn pink because I used the Fusion paint and it had a top coat on it. If you're not using Fusion and you're just using milk paint, you want to make sure you seal that milk paint before you put the white on top or you will get pink. So I'm going to really, really rough this up, guys. I'm taking off a lot of the loose paint, and then I'm taking paint off all the edges, and I love how it turned out. I know it's not everybody's cup of tea, but I love Chippy Distressed. Anyway, so I am going over these with Sweet Pickins oil wax, the dark oil wax. I use this stuff all the time. I love it. My opinion, nothing works better on the milk paint than the oil wax because it really, really gets in all those little tiny, tiny cracks. So, and it gives it a very authentic old look. Now, if you don't like this kind of thing, you probably wouldn't like the first part of what I did to this anyway. So, but it does make it look very authentic. I do a lot of old windows and shutters and things like that I sell in my booth. And I almost always go through this process, and it authentically makes new things look old. So anyway, I'm going to go over these, and after I put the oil wax on, I basically rub it off almost as soon as I put it on. So then after that, I am going to take the 3 leftover pieces that we had from that piece of decoupage paper, and I'm going to be trimming those basically with the water paintbrush thing and getting a nice rough edge. So now I'm just going to be putting these on with my Paint Couture's decoupage medium in matte. I usually use the matte just because I don't always know what kind of finish I want at the end, and I usually put some sort of top coat on it, so then that way if I don't want it glossy, it has a matte finish. If I want it glossy, then I just put a gloss on top of it. But anyway, I'm going over it and just putting all these pieces down, and I'm wanting just a very kind of rustic little look to it. Now I have some hearts. I believe I got them on Amazon a long time ago, and I'm going over these just with a rag, just rubbing on some wax. This is espresso from Fusion. It's just a brown wax. And then I'm using Tickled Pink by Sweet Pickins milk paint that I've already mixed up. And having the wax down is going to make this chip a little bit more and crack a little bit more. That's a tip if you're trying to make your milk paint do some crackling. If you're using raw wood, the issue is that the milk paint will absorb into it and it won't crack. So if you put the wax on it, it'll crack a little bit more. So I'm wanting a lot of chipping on this and cracking. So I did put the wax on it. And of course I'm going to do 2 coats. And each coat I'm going to use my heat gun. And that gives it more crackling and more chipping. Because this is going to go with the rest of our banner that we're making, so it kind of has to match because it has to be kind of chippy. And this is the other part of that decoupage paper. These are the 2 larger cherubs. There's one that's bigger than this too we're going to use later on in the video, but I'm going to go ahead and kind of just cut that out, and then I'm going to decoupage over that. And I'm using my same Paint Couture matte medium to do that. And just kind of pressing down with my finger. There's one thing on rice paper you have to be careful. It's very, very durable, but if you press on it too much, it's very fibrous. If you put too much water on it and use your fingers, what'll happen is you'll start to dissolve the paper. And that's because your fingers are actually kind of rough, and the paper is very fibrous, so it'll start to dissolve. So after these are all dry, I'm taking my oil wax by Sweet Pickins, and I'm going to go over these again. Just because I really want this to look like it's something that was painted on and it's been around for a long time. And I kind of felt like the decoupage paper looked just a little bit too new. And this is going to kind of blend it all together. And of course I do the back of these also. And I'm going to go over the hearts with the oil wax also. Just so they all kind of go together. Because I really want this to have a very, just an old, like this has been around for a really, really long time. And I am taking a little bit of that same pink milk paint, and I'm going in on the little white spots that kind of show against the on the heart, and I'm kind of touching those up a little bit so that it blends more. And now what I'm doing is I'm going to be making some tassels, or really kind of a messy bow. And I'm making, I believe it's 4 of them. And all I'm doing is cutting strips of ribbon, cutting strips of material, anything. I've got some sari silk in there. And I'm using my little, I don't know, is it a bow dazzler or something? Anyway, I bought this on Amazon. I'll try and remember to link all this stuff. I really am bad about that, but I will try and do that. But all you do is put a piece across. You see that sari silk going up and down, and then that's vertical, and then horizontally you just add all your little pieces of ribbon to it. And you obviously do not have to have this to make these bows. I just bought it on a whim, and I kind of thought it was useless. Why should I buy it? But I wound up doing it, and I really like it. It's like that third hand that you always need when you're doing a bow, really, is what it is. So then after you get everything in there that you want, you're going to take a little thing that goes across it and smush all the ribbons down. And it just kind of smushes them all down, gets them in there nice and tight. And then what you do is you just take your other piece and tie a knot. I actually tie 2 knots, and that's it. That makes your messy bow. And I'm going to do 4 of those. So now what I do, I've got this beaded garland, and I am just using some folk art brown wax. I think this is probably the best way to stain things. And I am just staining the garland with that. I mixed it with water so it was a little watery. And now I'm using the milk paint called Truffle. This is a little bit kind of darker grayish. It's a really, really great color if you want something to look old and you don't want to have to put any kind of stain or wax or anything over it. You can see it looks like old paint to me. Anyway, I'm going to go over this, and I'm not trying to be perfect on this. I don't care if some of the brown shows through. I want it to look like maybe it was kind of chipped up a little bit. See, that's how it looks. So it's the perfect old paint look. So all I'm doing here is I am making a tassel to go on the end of the garland, and I just basically took pieces and put them together, then tied off the top, tied it to the end of the garland, and you see those long strings that I added to it. I am just going to use that to wrap around the end of that tassel. And now after I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and tie all of these pieces that we made onto this garland here. And I'm kind of counting the beads to try and get them, equal distance apart. And I'm just using just some twine that I have to continue on with the rustic look. And there's a total of 5 pieces. There's the 3 hearts and then the 2 cherubs. With the 2 cherubs are on the wood hearts. And what we do is I put the tassels in between all of the wood pieces. So there's enough of these to go in between, and I just kind of count my beads and then put them on. And just tie them on. And I kind of trim them up a little bit to make sure they're, pretty much even. So I am using milk paint. This is the milk paint video. Did y'all notice? I'm using the milk paint Olive by Sweet Pickens. And this is Birdie. And I am actually going to mix some Birdie in with the Olive because I actually wanted it a little bit more blue. I'm trying to get kind of a bluish green, but I actually want two different colors. If you ever notice, whenever I layer things, I will have like different colors of white or different colors of gray or different colors of blue. And mainly, you know, I know it's a subtle difference, but it does make a difference. And I'm going over this whole wood blank that I got from IOD. I think I still have some on my website. I'm not sure. I think I do have a few. I don't know. I may be out of stock. I'm not sure. And I'm going to go over one coat, and of course, and let it dry with my heat gun. And then do another coat and dry it. And now what I'm doing is I'm filling in the Felicity mold, and this is from IOD. This is absolutely gorgeous. They're out of stock at IOD, but I do have several of these if you're interested on my website. But I really didn't, you know, at first like it, to be honest with you. I thought, wow, but when you see this, it is an amazing mold. And I think what's interesting is that it became popular later. It wasn't when it first came out of the chute. I don't think people got it. And I'm also feeling the Bose mold there because, you know, and I'm going to use that actually on something else, not on this project. And I actually have to do 3 full castings of this mold in order to have enough to do this project. And I'm using Fabricast, and it's a quick cast. It cures in about 10 minutes. And all I'm doing here is I'm taking all of the different pieces and deciding where I want to put them. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue them down, and I'm using my super glue with the spray to do that. You could definitely put this down with Tite Bond, but I'm doing a video and I don't have time to wait for things to dry. So if you guys knew, most of these videos that I do like this probably encompass anywhere from 8 to 12 hours worth of filming that I condense down to under an hour. So I hope you appreciate that because it's quite a job. But I still have to find ways to make it, you know, a little bit quicker. And using the super glue, and this stuff works. It's not coming off after. And so anyway, I'm going to go ahead and put these pieces on, and I put the glue on, and then I spray after. And I'm trying to make them reasonably symmetric, you know, but it doesn't have to be perfect. You're not going to really be able to tell. But wait until you see this. I absolutely love this mold, and I really honestly had my doubts when it first came out. And I think other people did too, because I don't think it was a big seller at first, but now it's sold out completely and been sold out at IOD. I'm hoping they get it back in stock, but like I said, I do have quite a few. I mean, not a ton, maybe like 4 or 5. So anyway, you just put the glue down, and after you put it down, I just spray on the outside parts and it gets in there. And this stuff, it doesn't move. It does not move. It's not coming off. It works extremely well. You know, and if you're doing projects and you don't have time for them to wait, it works. So now what I'm doing is I am mixing just the Birdie milk paint from Sweet Pickens, and it is a bluish, more of a bluish green color, and I'm going to put that on top. And the reason I do that is I'm using the milk paint, and there's going to be crackling and chipping and whatever, and I like to have a little bit of variation in color. Uh, I don't know, to me it makes it look older, and then it also accentuates all the little chipping and everything. And of course the milk paint is definitely thinner than a regular chalk paint would be, or a mineral paint, so it's going to take a couple coats. Again, I always use my heat gun on each coat to kind of add to the cracking. You always get more cracking when you use your heat gun. And I'm going to do 2 coats on this to make sure that it covers pretty well. And after I do that, I mixed up a little bit more of the birdie, and I am putting some salt wash in this. And if you're not familiar, salt wash is an additive that you add to your paint, to your milk paint. You can add it to any kind of paint really. But it thickens up the paint, but it also adds a texture. And I know a lot of people use baking soda and other additives, and there's other brands. I'm going to just tell you, I've used a lot of them, and I hands down love salt wash. I think it works the best. And what I'm going to do is I'm going in with this salt wash mixture, and I'm going around all of the edges. And whenever you do a casting, especially a resin one, there's always a little gap. You can never get it perfectly on there flat because the casting isn't perfectly flat, and probably your surface isn't perfectly flat. So I go in all the edges to make it look more like it's molded together, like this is carved wood or something. And it will, now I do not go in on the castings itself on the detail because you don't want to lose your detail. But I do hit all the flat parts on that wood, on the sides and everything, and then dry it with my heat gun. And now what I'm doing is I am going over this whole thing with Fusion's liming wax. It's a white wax. Absolutely love this stuff. I love their waxes. They're just really top quality. And now I'm just wiping off all of the excess wax, rubbing it off of the top and getting all the extra off. And now I'm using it's called grit. It looks like I don't know, this to me looks like charcoal dust or something. And you go over your areas where you've waxed and adding extra little kind of a dirt look to it. I think this, especially on white wax, it adds a patina to it that looks very, very natural. And a lot of times when you white wax something, to me it looks like it's too new. And I used to just add a dark wax to it, and I really, really love using the grit because you can pinpoint where you want it, and to me it just turns out really cool. After I put it on, I take a dry brush and then brush off the excess, and it sticks to wherever you had wax. You have to have some sort of wax for it to stick to. I guess it could stick to a glaze or something too, but I think it really is meant to go with like a wax. Anyway, you're taking off all of the excess so it goes in all those little cracks. And now what I'm doing is I'm going over the tops of all of these castings, and I'm using French Gold by Paint Couture. Absolutely love this stuff, guys. I love all of their metallics. They are amazing. You can never really do it justice on the film because it doesn't, they look so good in person. Anyway, this French Gold, it dries a lot more beautifully metallic than you're seeing here, but the color itself is it's just amazing. It is not really gold and it's not really silver, and it somehow looks amazing with any kind of greenish blue or blue French color. So now what I'm doing is I'm going over the middle of this with some chalk paint, and this is buttermilk by Paint Couture. It's just a regular old chalk paint. And I'm going to cover the middle completely. And I got some there on my side thing there. Anyway, I covered the middle, and we're going to be putting this piece of decoupage paper in it. So I'm going to go ahead and tear the edges. All I'm really trying to do on this is just get that white border off of it. And this piece of decoupage paper is smaller than the middle of that portion. So some of the background is going to show. So that's why I kind of left the edges kind of green. But I didn't do enough. I went and measured it again. So I'm going to go back in and I'm going to add the green around the edges or anywhere I think that it might show. And so now I've got it to where I think it looks good on there. And I'm going to go ahead and use my decoupage medium on there. And just kind of get it on there straight. I think I had to lift it up a couple times because I put the heart on crooked. And I use my little plastic baggie on my hand to rub it down. I try not to use my hand too much. I use my little fingers in the corners. And one thing I always do when I'm using decoupage paper is I always, after I get it down, I dry it with my heat gun, and that takes out any wrinkles. It kind of works kind of like an iron, like people do the iron-on method. And I go over that with my decoupage medium and let it dry. And then after that, I go over it again with that Amber Honey by Paint Couture. And I'm not covering it completely. This saves product. And then I spray it with my mister. Just to move it around more, and it does save product when you do that. And then after I take off all of that, I'm going to go and make sure I go around all the corners, but I'm adding some white wax in there too because I want to have the same finish that I have on the outside. And I take some of that grit and go in all the corners because, where would you normally have that? And then the very last thing that I do is I take Paint Couture top coat in a I believe, did I do satin? Oh, semi-gloss. And I'm doing kind of a crosshatch motion, and I'm stippling it on there. And I'm doing that because I want this to look like it's brush strokes and that it's a painting. And it'll make it look more like it's a painting when it's done. I could have actually done that instead of adding the matte medium on top, but I actually didn't think about it. This one, I think is my favorite. I really think it is. If you have not ever used the Ephemeral Melange Transfer by IOD, it is by far one of the best values that you will get in their transfer sets. It's less expensive, and you get a ton of transfers. And I bought this at the Woodpile for 40% off. I love these. They are a great value when they're 40% off. And this is just one of their cutting boards. And I am mixing some Sweet Pickins milk paint in the color Lantern. It's basically black. but it dries kind of a grayish black. I love this black, guys. If you're wanting something to have that old-timey look, there's nothing better than milk paint. Nothing better than milk paint. And I love Sweet Pickins. And so you mix it 50-50, 50% powdered, 50% water. Let it set and you paint with it. And you can only keep it for like a few hours and then it kind of gels up. So now I'm going over this with my heat gun after I painted it. I've only done one coat and it will chip a little bit. If I had sealed this first, this wood, it would chip even more. But I knew I was going to be sanding it a little bit and give it a very kind of rough texture. I kind of went over it with my little sand tool and a lot of it chipped off. And now what I'm going to be doing is I am going over this. This is a called Dead Flat by Paint Couture, which I absolutely love because it is dead flat. If you want something to be sealed but not look like it's sealed, that is what you want to get. Now what I'm doing is I am taking my mixing paint by IOD, which is white, and this is supposed to be used to mix your paint, but it is a permanent ink, and it works really, really well as an ink. And what I was doing is the way you get your ink from IOD is you buy the bottle separately, and then you buy these pads, and then you just kind of put your ink on there and let it set, and you basically ink up your own pad. And because I just inked that pad, it's a little bit juicier than I want it, but that's okay. It'll turn out all right. We're going to be sanding some of that off. Again, I'm taking my kindest regards, and I'm going over this board. And honestly, I have no idea why I sealed it before I did that, because I could have waited till after. But what happened is this kindest regard stamp was kind of an afterthought, so I didn't do that. Now I'm heat setting all of this, and I'm going to go over it again with my Paint Couture Dead Flat. Anyway, Dead Flat is great if you want to seal a project. And the reason we want this sealed is that we're going to be putting a transfer on top of it. And yes, you can transfer directly on it, but it is really hard to transfer on chalk paint or milk paint if it is not sealed, except like the Fusion. Fusion comes with a sealer built in, so you don't have to do any of that on Fusion. But since we use the milk paint, we did have to seal it. And I put this transfer on there, and oh my gosh, I love this. I love it. I really love it. I'm so glad that I put the white on there, and I'm sanding off a couple spots with this sand paper, and then I decided to get another grit sandpaper that's a little bit lighter, and I'm going over it, and I'm actually going over some of the words too, and then just to make the whole thing look old. You don't want to have a transfer put on that looks brand new when you're trying to make things look old. And now I'm taking again that Dead Flat by Paint Couture and going over the whole thing, because I really do want that flat old look. You know, I don't want it to look shiny, and this will definitely look like that. But you do have to seal your transfers in when you're done, and this will hold that transfer in. And now what I'm using is some hemp foil by Fusion. Sweet Pickins also has some. Anyway, this stuff is great to seal in your cutting boards because it is food safe. It dries rock hard. You do not want to do this before you try and put a transfer on because it will not stick. You don't want to use a wax before you do transfer. But anyway, this will make this side of that cutting board completely food safe. And I am going to use it on the other side. The milk paint is completely food safe, but we've put a transfer on there and we've put ink and whatever. This will make the top portion of it food safe also, but I don't know that I would definitely be putting food and things on that. But this is just an extra coat. It will dry super hard and protect that transfer. So now what I'm doing is I'm making another messy bow with a bunch of ribbon that I have, and I'm tying another ribbon around it, and I'm going to leave one of them kind of long in the middle, and I am not going to glue this onto the board. I'm just going to tie it. This is a box that I thrifted recently. My favorite thrift store had everything 90% off, so it's 90% off that tag, and so basically next to nothing. And it is a wood box, and I am going to be going over it with Paint Couture's 2-in-1 primer, which I absolutely love. It goes on really well. It dries really quick. It does a great job. And I'm going to go over that with just one coat of the primer. And then when I get done with that, I'm going to go over it with one coat of Picket Fence. Here I am with, and that's Picket Fence by Fusion. It's a beautiful pure white color, and I'm looking through the paint inlay Gloria. And this was a recent release, the Christmas release by IOD. And believe it or not, in this, it has a lot of inlays that to me are not necessarily Christmas specific. There's quite a few little cherubs in there, angels, French writing, all this scroll work. It's just absolutely beautiful. I mean, I can see using this for so many things. So anyway, I'm cutting out just a couple of these that I'm going to be using on this project. I'm just pointing out some other ones that I could use, but I'm going to go ahead and just pick out a few that I think will work on this. I'm going to be going for a very kind of a old world type of look for this, so it's going to be very distressed. I'm showing you the bows mold and the trimmings mold. This is the trimmings too. I think I have both of those in stock as well as the Gloria. But I am going to fill this mold with hot glue just because I don't have any of this particular bow pre-made. I have a lot of pre-made castings, but I used all these up. And also this piece of trimmings, and then also another one on the end there I'll be using. But you can use hot glue as long as your glue gun is a hot glue gun and not a cool one. It won't work. So after I do my molds, I'm going to glue them on with some Titebond. Quick and thick, and it works really well. I probably could have just put this on with my hot glue gun. I don't know why I use this because it does take longer to dry. But anyway, I'm taking the extra glue off of this, and then I'm going to put the bottom piece on there. And this works really well. I personally like the castings with the quick dry resin better, but I just thought I would show you something different. If you need to have your molds quickly, you can definitely use glue. I don't know cost effective wise whether it's similar or, you know, it depends, I guess, where you get your resin from. Anyway, so now what I'm doing is I am going over the castings from the glue gun with the paint Fusion's picket fence. This is a very, very white. If you want a pure white, this is a great color. I love Fusion paint because it covers extremely well. It has a primer and a top coat built in, and it's self-leveling, so it's a fantastic paint to use. I am going to be mixing some of this same Fusion paint with some salt wash. Salt wash is an additive that gives you texture, but it also thickens your paint quite a bit, and it not only gives you texture, but it also will dry really quick too. So I'm going to be using that around the castings just to kind of fill in any gaps that are there. I'm also going to be using this same salt wash mix all over this box because I'm wanting it to look like it's old and chippy and been around for a long time and has lots of layers. If you do not like that kind of look, you could totally skip that part of it. But anyway, I'm going around the castings mainly to fill in any gaps. Anytime you have a casting, you're always going to have like a little gap, and I just really don't like them. I'm going on the inside portion of this little box, and later I end up taping all that off because I decided that it was a lot harder than I thought to do it without making a mess. So anyway, I do end up taping all of the inside off when I do it. And if you notice, this top part all looks like gold pages, and I leave that the way it is. So now what I'm doing is I'm getting ready to put my inlay down, and what you need to do on your inlay is you need to put a coat of paint. And this is where I think I mess up a little bit. I went over it too many times with my brush, and I actually took paint off, and there's a couple spots where I did not have enough paint on there. You do have to wet your inlay before you put it down, or you can do it after you put it down. I prefer to mist it. You're not really spraying it, you're using a mister, and then I'm going to spray it on top. And you'll see later there's portion of this inlay that does not come up, and I truly believe, you can tell I've done enough of them by the way they look that I actually just took too much paint off. I went over, if you notice when I put the paint down, I kind of went over it too many times with my brush, and I think I took off too much paint. You have to have enough paint for the inlay to lay in. It has to stick to that paint. Anyway, so I'm misting my inlay grid side out, and I'm spraying the paint side, which is the part you put down. The grid is on the outside. It's very hard to tell once it's wet, but for sure the grid is on the outside and the paint is on the inside, and you basically just lay it down. I'm using a brayer. Normally I don't. I just kind of wanted to show that that's an option to press it in there. But again, you do have to make sure you put enough paint down, and I think on both of these, I think a lot of it was because of the brush I was using was so big that I actually took off a little bit too much paint when I was going back and forth. But that is okay because we are definitely looking for a old look on this. So it's actually going to add to the look. And also, on the portions that I missed, I am going to fix a couple of them, not all of them. I like some of it not being on there perfect. And you'll see on this one what happens is part of the top does not transfer, and I think again I just didn't have enough paint up there. So I'm going to fix that, and it's very easy to do if you want to fix it. A lot of times I don't. I think the beauty of these inlays is that the imperfect look of them allows you to have that old look, But because this is such a important part of this, I wanted to add the little hand on that one cherub and then that top portion. So I basically just put the little portions on, put my paint down, and then I just laid my inlay right where it connected. And basically you just put it down just like you would the first time you put your inlay, and I have fixed many an inlay like that. So now I'm going to pull this off, and you're going to see that it did for the most part fix what I needed to fix. The little hand is on there, and then also you'll see that the top of that little cherub is on there also. So there you go. So that did fix it, and then this added that other little cherub and the top that we didn't get before. Now what I'm doing is I am painting some pre-made castings from the Classic Elements mold by IOD and Lock and Key. And the reason I am putting these on now instead of before like I did on the other part is some of these castings are going to go directly on the inlay that we already put down. And I actually like this on top the way I had it the first time. But you know, I don't know. You just kind of, sometimes you get in a hurry and stuff happens. So anyway, I am going to just be gluing these down with my hot glue gun. And they're going to go right over the casting. And like I said, this is not on there perfect, but that's okay. And also too, I did spray my inlays with one coat of a clear coat before I put these castings on, because if they get wet or you mess with them, they can smear. If you look at that one, it smeared a little bit. When I was working on the other side, I laid it down and there was a few drops of water on my parchment paper, and then it did smear it because it is wet paint, so you do have to be careful. I'm not too worried about it. I think it's going to go with our look. Now what I'm doing is I'm taking some of my salt wash mix and I am going over different parts of this all over because I want to add that texture in different spots. I'm going in the spots where we lost some of our inlay to make it look like it's naturally worn. And then what I'm doing is I am taking some clear wax, and I'm going to put clear wax all over this piece because we're going to be going over this with a dark wax. I always recommend putting a clear wax on first because that gives you a lot more movement with your dark wax, and also it allows you to take as much off as you want. Right now what I'm using is I'm using Fusion aging wax, and I love the color of this wax. It's not really a black, it's not really a brown, and it pretty much matches the inlay color, which is really not a black. It looks black, but it's like a very darkish brown, very similar to the aging wax. And I'm going over all of the castings, and I'm going over a good portion of the where the inlay is. You'll see that wherever the salt wash is, it will grab onto it. And I know you're thinking, oh my gosh, but most of this is going to be wiped off. Again, I do want this to look old. I wanted the picket fence color because I wanted that extreme contrast of the white and the dark color. And the Fusion aging wax is perfect with this because it matches perfectly. And I love the aging wax color because there's so many things that I do that it just seems to be the exact right color you need when you're trying to age something. So now I'm going to go on the back. I'm going to do the same thing. And then again, we put salt wash on this in different spots, so the salt wash is going to catch some of that. You wanted to do that if you're looking for this aged look, because otherwise a good portion of the aging wax would not cling to anything, and it just wouldn't look look like something that was really old, because it wouldn't normally just be aged and, you know, just the castings. It would be aged all over. So now I'm wiping off a good portion of this with my wipes. And if you don't like this look, guys, you can totally skip this part of the aging and all of that and the salt wash, but I definitely love this look on some items. It sells really well for me. And see how that just wipes right off. And I could take more off if I wanted to. I don't, but you could definitely take more off. And so now what I'm doing is I am using something called Grit by Sweet Pickins, and it's hard to explain, but it's kind of a grayish dirt type thing. And you need to put your wax down first before you put that on, or you could actually use a glaze also, but it works better with wax. And I'm just putting it in a few places. I'm just taking my paintbrush and I'm dipping it in there, and then I'm going to go ahead and put it on. It's very fine. It works fantastic for adding a little extra dark areas and a dirty look. And that's way more than that's going to stick on there. I usually take a brush and I will go ahead and wipe off any of the excess. And now what I'm doing is I am taking raw silk, which is a kind of a beigey white color by Fusion, and I'm going over certain portions of my castings and even the top. And I do that because you always want that contrast in there as light to dark, but I don't want to go with the really stark white of the picket fence. So I'm using the raw silk, and I'm using Fusion because it does have the top coat built in, and I won't have to go over this again with a top coat. And I'm going to make sure I do the insides with all the wax and everything else so it matches the outside. And then what I'm doing is I am going to go ahead and go over all of this with some gold gilding wax. And this is called Victorian Gold Wax by Paint Couture, and I love this. I think I have a couple of these in stock on my website, but it's become one of my favorite gold waxes, if not my favorite. I use Rub and Buff a lot, but this is very similar, and it's very cost effective, and it is a beautiful gold. So I'm just taking some on my finger. I'm not trying to put it on perfectly because this is supposed to be an aged piece, and I'm going over the whole thing, all of my castings, etc. And I'm also going to be going around the edges and finishing it all up with that. So now I'm just adding some of that same gold on the side so it kind of blends in with the gold that I put everywhere else. I hope you enjoyed that. You can get most of the supplies that I used in this video on my website, rehatchdesigns.com. The link will be in the description. We offer IOD, Fusion, Paint Couture, Pen Art, Sweet Pickins Milk Paint, decoupage papers, recycled papers, and a lot of other things. We offer free shipping, flat rate shipping, and fast shipping. And if you got something out of this video, I'd really appreciate it if you would give me a thumbs up, share it out. That'd be very helpful. And also, guys, I will be back next week with all new videos, and I really appreciate you hanging out with me today. And we will see you all very, very soon. Take care. Bye-bye.